Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad. Peace be with him. Friends, have you ever seen how arrogance makes people forget that true power belongs only to Allah? Have you seen how the heavens punish arrogance in the blink of an eye? Then stay with us. Listen to this story until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so our hearts always remember the greatness of Allah. Israel, a small country on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, showcased its greatest pride. They had just opened an expansion of an international airport, which they claimed was the most modern in the world. Their media proudly announced that this airport would become the largest air transport hub in the region. Officials loudly declared that their country was protected from natural disasters, that no force in the world could destroy their achievements. Amid the hustle and bustle of the grand ceremony, no one paid attention to the strange phenomena beginning to appear in the sea. The waves in the Mediterranean grew higher and moved unusually. Local fishermen, returning with their catch, warned that something was wrong with the sea. Yet, all these warnings were dismissed as nonsense. Pride blinded their eyes and deafened their ears. Days passed, and the sky began to cloud over, though the rainy season was still far off. A strong wind blew from the sea, carrying a salty smell. Yesterday's waves now formed layered crests, as if gathering strength from the ocean's depths. Yet, in the city, life went on as usual. Planes continued to arrive at the airport. The roar of engines didn't alarm anyone, and no one suspected that death was creeping closer, waiting for its moment to strike mercilessly. That morning, the sky over the Mediterranean was grim. Dark clouds obscured the usual warm sunlight. A strong wind blew from the west, bringing a sharp, salty scent. Far out at sea, something terrifying began to form. A wall of water slowly rose from the depths. It grew higher and higher, resembling a moving mountain. Fishermen close enough to witness it trembled in fear. They shouted and turned their boats as fast as they could. "Tsunami! A big wave is coming!" one fisherman yelled, waving his arms. But their voices were drowned out by the wind and the roar of the raging waves. On the coast, life continued, as if nothing was amiss. At Israel's international airport, work was in full swing. Planes prepared for takeoff, passengers hurried to waiting areas, and staff were busy serving tourists. No sirens, no signs of danger. No one suspected that a colossal wall of water was approaching at deadly speed. Some coastal residents began to feel uneasy. The seawater suddenly receded far back, exposing a sandy shoal usually covered by waves. Seabirds flew low in disarray, as if fleeing the shoreline in panic. But for those who had never seen a tsunami, this sight seemed strange and curiosity-piquing. Many walked to the shore to take photos, unaware that death was rushing toward them. The wave was now clearly visible from the shore. Its height reached tens of meters. It moved swiftly, as if chasing time. Its sound was like the roar of 1,000 lions, shaking the earth. The sea, once a friend to fishermen, had turned into a terrifying enemy. In a few minutes the wave would hit the shore, and anyone in its path would have no escape. The moment arrived. A gigantic wave, as tall as a skyscraper, struck the coast with unimaginable force. The raging water instantly swept through coastal settlements, destroying houses like fragile toys. Trees were uprooted. Cars were lifted into the air and carried away like dry leaves. Israel's international airport was the first target of this elemental fury. Dozens of planes, neatly parked on the tarmac, were crushed in an instant. Some were thrown far into the sea, others overturned and shattered into pieces. The majestic runway vanished, swallowed by water mixed with mud and debris. The grand terminal building collapsed. Windows shattered into fragments, and thousands of people inside fled in panic. The wave didn't stop there. It surged toward the city, breaking through main streets, sweeping away markets, schools, hospitals, and shopping centers. Cities like Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Ashdod turned into a sea of mud in minutes. All human voices were drowned out by the roar of the raging water. Cries for help faded, replaced by the sound of water crashing and destroying everything in its path. No technology could stop the wave sent by Allah's permission. The country that always boasted of its might could now only kneel before his greatness. In an instant, the pride they cherished was obliterated, crushed by a force far greater than human. Wave after wave relentlessly struck the city. There was no respite for those trying to escape. Cities once full of light were now under a dark veil of water. Streets, usually filled with cars, were now only visible as faint shadows beneath the murky water. In Tel Aviv, tall buildings, the nation's pride, began to collapse one by one. Foundations, always sturdy, couldn't withstand the blows of water mixed with debris. The city's lights went out, leaving darkness illuminated only by flashes of lightning in an enraged sky. The sounds of collapsing buildings mingled with the noise of water, creating a terrifying symphony of destruction. Haifa, a vibrant port city, was now just a floating pile of debris. Large ships moored at the docks were torn away and carried far out to sea. Giant steel containers flew like toys, crashing into everything in their path. On the flooded streets, the bodies of people, left to fate, were silent witnesses that nothing can oppose Allah's will. Ashdod, an industrial hub, also didn't escape the tsunami's wrath. Large factories were flooded, warehouses destroyed, and fuel leaks sparked fires on the water's surface. Black smoke rose high into the sky, deepening the grim atmosphere enveloping the country. The water, still flowing from sea to land, turned all of Israel into one vast lake. There were no boundaries between city and coast. Everything merged into a sea of destruction. Survivors were trapped on the roofs of surviving buildings, clinging to each other and praying the next wave wouldn't take their lives. Yet, the sky remained dark, and the sea kept sending wave after wave without pause. Screams echoed across the country. From the roofs of still-standing buildings, people called for help. In streets turned into raging torrents, trapped individuals waved their arms, hoping for rescue. But no one could help them. Everyone was fighting for their own life. Among the debris swept by the water, household items, cars, and remnants of once cozy lives were visible. Children's dolls floated alongside books, their pages' letters fading. In the torrent, human bodies were carried to unknown destinations. Some crashed against walls, others got stuck. The waves didn't just destroy the physical, they severed all communication lines. Mobile phones stopped working. Radio signals vanished. Electricity was completely cut off. The country was isolated from the outside world. There was only darkness, the sound of water, and screams that grew rarer with each passing moment. In Haifa's port, ships swept by the waves now crashed against the shore, crushing homes and cars. Flames, fueled by ship fuel, spread, creating thick clouds of smoke that covered the sky. Fire and water painted a scene that froze anyone who saw it in terror. For those who survived the first hours of the disaster, fear gave way to despair. They could only stare at the raging sea, dreading that the next waves would be even bigger. Allah's wrath, unleashed that day, erased an entire nation from the face of the earth in an instant. The day began to fade into dusk, but sunlight couldn't pierce the thick gray clouds in the sky. The sea still roared, sending massive waves that crashed onto a shore no longer recognizable. The sounds of cars and human cries were gone. Only the wind's howl and the water's roar filled the air. Israel's international airport, which stood tall over the city that morning, had vanished entirely. The site became a vast expanse of water, littered with plane wreckage, wing fragments, passenger seats, and objects mixed with mud. The remains of the terminal were partially submerged, leaving only a cracked roof and leaning pillars. Major cities, once sparkling with lights, turned into dark shadows. Tel Aviv, full of lights and nightlife, became a silent, dark plain. Haifa, with its bustling port, was now filled with sunken ships atop collapsed buildings. Ashdod, the country's industrial hub, lay frozen under water that slowly began to recede but left total devastation in its wake. Seabirds flew low again, circling over bodies floating among the debris. The air was thick with the smell of fish mixed with rot. There were no signs of normal life. Highways, usually packed with cars, were now covered in a thick layer of mud, overturned vehicles, and bridges swept away by the flood. In this silence, one truth stood unshaken, needing no words. No force in this world can compare to Allah's might. That night, the arrogance of an entire nation was crushed by waves sent by his will. The storm subsided, but the wounds it left will remain forever. This story isn't just about a natural disaster. It's a clear manifestation of Allah's greatness, that His power extends over all the earth and sky. No one can boast before Him. Everything we cherish, wealth, status, technology, military might, is mere dust that vanishes if Allah wills it. The country we spoke of, which deemed itself invincible with advanced technology, grand airports, and modern cities, needed only a moment to fall to its knees before Allah's power. The massive wave that came made no distinctions. It struck everyone, regardless of wealth or weakness. In Allah's eyes, all humans are equal. We often fall into the trap of subtle arrogance, feeling secure because of a sturdy home, many cars, vast savings, or high status. We think calamity only strikes others, not us. We believe careful planning can shield us from all misfortune. In truth, Allah need only send a small warning for us to realize our helplessness without His aid. A disaster is a harsh reminder that life in this world is temporary. Everything can vanish in seconds. A majestic airport, a shining city, even an entire nation can turn into a sea of ruin if Allah wills it. What we have today is no guarantee for tomorrow. It's all borrowed, subject to being taken at any moment. My friends, from this story, we learn that arrogance is the beginning of ruin. Whenever someone feels great and independent of Allah, they dig their own grave. Allah's word reminds us that He does not love the proud and arrogant. Moreover, history has repeatedly shown that arrogant nations perish in the most unexpected ways. We, too, must learn this lesson and remain humble. Never think you're safe from trials. Never think you don't need Allah's protection. As long as we live, we must always remember that every breath, every step, every second of our lives is under His control. So let's keep our hearts free from arrogance. Let's be servants who are always grateful for blessings and patient in trials. Let's be people ready to help others, never looking down on anyone, always remembering that all we have is temporary. And most importantly, let's remember Allah often. Send prayers to Prophet Muhammad. May Allah bless him and grant him peace. Let's seek forgiveness frequently and pray that Allah always protects us from sudden calamities. For only under His protection can we feel safe. My friends, if we have the chance to live today, it's a sign of Allah's immense love. Let's seize this opportunity to repent, reform, become more obedient servants, and abandon all arrogance. For in the end, nothing is nobler before Allah than a pure heart and a soul submitted to Him. May Allah protect us all from arrogance, shield us from His wrath, and keep us under His care until the end of our days. Amen.